Hi, this is Sweet June coming back at you. I'm hoping everybody is having a blessed Saturday. Um, I want to talk about, I thought it would be interesting to educate you guys on, as I stated in many other videos, that I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I don't celebrate the holidays. We don't celebrate the holidays. Um, and I thought maybe I would do a video educating you guys on the reasons why we don't. Well, first of all, we don't celebrate them because they're pagan. If you would Google, if you go to Google and you Google holidays, the origin of holidays, you maybe type origin of holidays in or something like that. It will tell you, the origin of all these holidays, and a lot of them are pagan. And then, but I'm gonna talk about Christmas in particular. I'm gonna kind of educate you guys on why we don't celebrate Christmas, and I wanted to let you guys know, um, how we get through. Well, I can't speak for other witnesses. I can only speak for myself. Let you guys know kind of how I get through the holidays. Um, because it's not easy. The world is everybody in the world is celebrating these holidays, and it's hard, you know, sometimes to get through that, depending on the situation. So I was gonna try to let you guys know. I thought it'd be interesting to let you guys know how I navigate through the holidays, particularly Christmas, um, being a witness and not celebrating. Because I wasn't raised as a witness, and I didn't become a witness until I was in my I studied for 5 years, and I got baptized in my 40s, I think, early 40s somewhere. So I mean, I wasn't raised in it, so um, most of my life before that, you know, I celebrated the holidays. So if you were witnessing, you wasn't raised in it, and you spent many, many years celebrating the holidays, and then all of a sudden, I started studying when I was in my mid 30s. So up until then I was celebrating Christmas and all those, well, I didn't celebrate New Year's that much, Um, and so it's a little different. It's a little different coming into it as an adult, because when you wasn't, you spent many years celebrating it, and then it was a little difficult for me at first. Um, and then when I realized and did the when I did the research, and when I researched it, because they always encourage you to research. They always tell you, don't never take our word, study and research for yourself. And so um, when I researched, when I Googled and everything, and when I did the research on the holidays and the origins of the holidays, and how they were pagan and all that stuff, it helped me to get a better understanding as to why, you know, it's not a good idea as a Christian to celebrate the holidays. But a lot of religions, not down in anybody else's religion, but a lot of other religions believe in, celebrating. And, it's a lot of, because of, people, a lot of times people celebrate it because, the holidays is because that's what people have always done and stuff like that. And I think it's a lot of times people don't give too much thought. People don't put too much thought into, I know I didn't, people don't really think about it, um, and so I did the research and all that stuff, and um, after I did all that, I was more informed and everything, um, and of course you wouldn't become a witness if you don't want to stop celebrating the holidays. If you want to continue to celebrate them, then of course you wouldn't become one. But it's difficult for a lot of people. The holidays mean a lot to um, a lot of people. Christmas was a big one for me to get rid of, because of my kids and everything like that. But I'm gonna let you guys know as to why we don't celebrate them. First of all, yes, that is pagan. They're pagan. That's the number one reason why we don't celebrate. And Jesus, if you do the research, Jesus Christ was not born on December 25th. You got to do your research, people. You got to do your research. When we study with people and as witnesses, and I'm gonna stay tuned because I'm gonna do a Jehovah's Witness um, common myths video. I got that coming up, but I've had it on my list for quite some time. But I gotta um, I'm gonna do it in my TV format because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you to the website. I'm gonna take you to the jw.org website while I'm talking about it. But I want to get some scriptures together to show you in addition to that. So I got to get my scriptures together and all that, or what I'm going, and I got to lay it out on how I'm going to talk about and what myths I'm going to really go into depth and explain it to you. It may be a part 1 and 2. I don't know because I got to go into some detail. But anyway, I'm going to be doing that. I can't tell you when I'm going to do it, but I got to get it together. So I got to get all that together, make sure I got my scriptures together and all that. But it's going to be a Jehovah's Witness common myths. I'm going to be dispelling a lot of myths that people have about and misconceptions about people that a lot of people have about the Jehovah's Witness organization. So I can't tell you when that's coming, but it's coming. I just got to get everything together. But first of all, like I said, we don't celebrate them because they're pagan. And then, like the Bible does not tell us to celebrate Christmas. Um, if you read the King James Version, and then we have the New World Translation, there's nothing in there that tells us to celebrate Jesus' birth. I mean, there's nothing in the Bible that tells us to celebrate Jesus Christ's birth. Okay, so the Bible doesn't tell us to celebrate his birth. We're not really sure. If you do your research, we're not really sure when Jesus was born. We think he might have been born somewhere in the fall, because of the Bible talks about the weather or whatever. I think at the time, I don't know, does it talk about the weather? But certain things that was going on during that time, it kind of tells you how the weather was or whatever, what time of year it was, and um, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. If you do your research, he wasn't born on December 25th. And then and the Bible doesn't tell us to celebrate Christmas. I mean, I haven't read anything in the Bible that said go on and celebrate Christmas. Go ahead and celebrate Jesus' birth. What we celebrate is in March we have, but it's based on Niacin. I can't remember. Um, it's around, maybe it's around March or April. I want to say no, not April, February or March, somewhere in there. We have our what we call our memorial service, and I've done a video talking about that actually, but it's way back in my archives. We have our memorial service where we have our memorial service for Jesus Christ, and we celebrate his death, because the reason why we celebrate his death and his resurrection is important as well, but he had to die first before he got a resurrection. And his death has a lot of significance. If Jesus hadn't died, if Jehovah God, uh, uh, John 3:16 says, uh, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. You know, um, that scripture says it all. I mean, he Jehovah God loved us. He said, for God so loved the world, he loved us so much that he sacrificed his only son. I have 2 sons, and I know when I was studying, the lady that I was studying, God rest her soul, she's no longer with me. Um, she used the parable of, she said, what if one of your sons, I mean, what if there was a fatal disease going around, and the antidote to that disease was in one of your son's bodies, but they had to kill your son to get it, to create the formula to save a lot of people's lives. Would you be willing to sacrifice your son to save all these lives? And I was like, that's the parable she gave me, and I was like, I said, well, I'm gonna have to pray for him, but I said, I wish, I don't want people to die, and I'll have to pray for them, but I can't do that. I can't give up my baby. I can't give up neither one of my babies. So, and then she told me that goes to show you how so much higher God's thinking is. That's what she told me at the time. It shows you how much higher his thinking is. God's thinking is so much higher than ours, that Jesus was on his only son, his only son, and he sacrificed, and it had to be so painful for him to see his son suffer the way he did. And but John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son." He loved us so much because Adam and Eve, Satan deceived Adam and Eve. He told them not to eat of that tree. But Satan, for the record, Satan told the first recorded lie. Satan told the first recorded lie. And he told them that, oh, you're all right. Go on and take that fruit and eat that fruit. You're going to be all right. And he lied to them. He lied to Eve and deceived Eve. And she took a fruit, and then she talked Adam into doing the same thing. And when they did that, we were created, Adam and Eve was created to live forever. They weren't created to die. They were in perfect paradise. But when they took that forbidden fruit, they became imperfect, and they brought death upon themselves. Jehovah God allowed them to be fruitful and multiply, and multiply the earth. I think that's where that scripture comes from, and to multiply the earth. But then after he allowed them to do that, they eventually got old and they died. Sickness is not a natural condition for us. When we get sick, it is not a natural condition. We were not created to. Adam and Eve are our first original parents. Well, they wasn't created to get sick and die. But when they took that forbidden fruit, they were disobedient, and it brought sickness and death. That was the consequence of them being disobedient. It brought sickness and death on them. And we are the descendants of Adam and Eve. We are their descendants. So we inherited sickness and death from Adam and Eve. We inherited that. That's the reason why we get sick and we die. you know. And so even a really old person, even I work with the elderly, and then some of them are on up there in age, and if they pass away, we're still saddened, because death is just, it's not natural. Death is not natural at any age. It's not natural. We was not created to die, but because of Adam and Eve's disobedience. Okay, so I'm getting off topic, but in other words, I don't mean to get all the way off the subject, but we celebrate, um, and that's the reason why we celebrate Jesus' death, because we want to give appreciation, and we want to acknowledge the importance of his death, because if he hadn't have died, we would not have a chance to be saved. God could have said, he could have said, well, I'm sorry about their luck, but I'm not sacrificing my only son so they can. But he realized that because we were rendered imperfect, it wasn't our fault. It was because of something Adam and Eve did. And so because he's we serve a just God. He's loving and he's just. That's one of his many qualities. He he didn't think it was just, and he didn't think it was fair for us to suffer for something that, you know, well, we are suffering because we are imperfect and we get sick and die. But because he sacrificed his only son, we have the opportunity to have everlasting life. We can buy it. In other words, he bought it back. When he sacrificed his only son, we bought it back. We bought that. He bought. What did I say? We bought it. He bought that back. He bought that back for us. So we now have the opportunity to earn um to earn our way into gaining everlasting life. Whereas if he hadn't sacrificed his son Jesus, we wouldn't have that opportunity. So that's the loving provision that Jehovah God, and that's what we celebrate. That's as witnesses. That's what we celebrate. We have that memorial service every year, and you be surprised at the turnout that we get. We get a pretty good turnout. We got quite a few people coming from other religions. We get people from other religions coming to our memorial service, and if it's not that we don't recognize the resurrection, we do. His resurrection was important. He did. I mean, he got descended up to reign, to sit next to his Father in heaven. But he had to die first before he got the resurrection. And his death is so important. And we just think that the world is getting around that. When they celebrate Christmas, they're celebrating his birth. And then his birth was important. Yes, of course his birth was important. But then when they celebrate Easter, they're celebrating the resurrection. But where at in there are you celebrating his death? Jesus sat at the table with his disciples because he knew Judas betrayed him. He knew Judas, that was in his spirit. He knew Judas was going to betray him like that. And Jesus sat at the Last Supper with his disciples. And he told the disciples, he knew that, he knew what they were going to do. And he sat at the table, the Last Supper, and he had the cup of wine, and he lifted up the cup of wine. He said, "This wine is my blood." And then he held up the bread, and he said, "This bread is my body. Do this in remembrance of me." He told the disciples to do this in remembrance of me. The wine represented his blood, the bread represented his body. And he told the disciples to do this in remembrance of me. In other words, and so that's what we do at the memorial. We don't partake, but we pass it down. The wine, we use real wine, we don't use grape juice. We pass it down, and we pass the bread down. The anointed ones take a sip, the bread. That's a whole nother conversation. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, and I'm so sorry about that. But I just want to educate you guys on why we don't celebrate Christmas, but we do put a lot of emphasis on Jesus' death because um, we acknowledge the importance of Jesus' death. You know, if he hadn't died, if Jehovah God hadn't sacrificed his only son, um, he gave that loving provision, we would not have a chance at everlasting life. So we acknowledge that. We have a service every year, and we acknowledge that. If I wasn't a witness, I would still go to that because it's just so vital and it's just so important. Um, and that's the reason why, it's pagan, and the Bible doesn't tell us to celebrate it. So a lot of people think, we don't celebrate it because uh, they think we don't celebrate it because we don't believe in Jesus. And that's just totally absurd. Um, Jesus is the reason why we go out in the ministry. Jesus is the reason, the very reason why witnesses come knocking on your door. It's because of Jesus. Because Jesus told us, Jesus said, "Go out and make disciples." He said, "Go out and make disciples." So we're being footstep followers to Jesus Christ, and we're following His command by going out in service, knocking on your door. I'm witnessing to you. I'm witnessing to you right now on this video. You know, He said, "Go out and make disciples." So, you know, Jesus is the reason why we go out in the ministry. He's the very reason why we do what we do, you know, because that's the commandment that he gave us. So um so that's just wanted to educate you on that reason why we don't celebrate Christmas or any of the holidays per se, you know. Um, Now, I just wanted to let you know, I thought it would be interesting to kind of tell you guys how I get through, particularly Christmas. Thanksgiving and New Year's is not really that major, but Christmas is a big one, and sometimes it's hard to, um, because this is everybody in the world is doing this. Everybody in the world is doing this. I remember when I worked at the daycare. When I worked at the daycare, it was really hard when I worked at the daycare to get around it. It was really hard because we had to do certain activities with Christmas centered activities with the children. You know, we had to do certain centered activities with the children, and they had parties and things like that, and artwork and everything was centered around Christmas, obviously, for the had Santa Claus coming up to the center and all that kind of stuff, and so that made it a lot more difficult for me to navigate around it when I worked at the daycare because it was like right here in my face. But this job that I have now, I like actually. It's nice because I don't come in till 11 o'clock. So by the time I get to work, all the festivities or whatever it is that they did for the holiday is over, and the residents are in bed. So I by the time I come in, I've missed all that. So it makes it nice because I don't have to be a part of all the festivities, or I don't have to be there and be in the midst of all that. I know when they celebrated Halloween, they did something. I think they did something for Halloween, but by the time I got to work, all them festivities was over, you know and they was in the bed. So I didn't have to worry about all that. So that's what it makes it nice working third shift because you can kind of get around as a witness. I can kind of get around all that, and I don't have to be there while they're doing all these holiday centered activities. And so that makes it nice. So as far as the work situation, it's straight. Um, but I know, like I said, when I worked at the daycare, it was like 20 times more challenging you know, because Christmas is Christmas and Halloween and Easter is a big deal for little kids. That's those holidays are a huge deal for little kids. So they doing any and everything that's you know the whole month. And I mean they start early. They start at the beginning of the doggone month and they got you decorating the classroom. They got you putting up decorations. We had to put up decorations. We had to decorate the classroom. And they start at the beginning of the month, the beginning of December, all the way to the end. And you got to do all these activities to centered around Christmas throughout the whole month. So it's right in your face, and it's hard as a witness to navigate through that. If you were a witness and you work in an educational system, whether it be in a daycare or secondary education or whatever, it's kind of hard to maneuver around all that. So I thought that was very, very challenging. But this job is cool because I don't get there till 11 o'clock. All them festivities are said and done. But it's sometimes because, like I said, I spent a large portion of my life celebrating Christmas. So, like when I go to the store, sometimes I go to the store and Christmas music is playing. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you guys. It's not easy. Sometimes it's not easy. I'll go to the store and the Christmas music is playing, and I'll catch myself singing the whatever song is, and I had, believe it or not, because I like to sing. Believe it or not, I like to sing, and so there were certain songs, Christmas songs, that I love to sing when I was in the world. And so if they're playing one of my songs that I used to like, that used to be my favorite, I catch myself every now and then singing it, and then I had to catch myself like, Jew, Jesus singing that. So I'm gonna keep it 100 with you guys. I mean, it's not easy. I say because if you come into the organization at a much older age and you spent a large portion of your life celebrating the holidays, it's sometimes it can be very challenging. I catch myself singing the Christmas songs sometimes, and then um and then like I said, the situation with the job is cool. Um and and um um and then you got to this it's this because this is what the world is doing. The whole world is doing this, and so and then when somebody says, oh, that's another thing. When somebody says Merry Christmas, I'll sometimes say same to you. And then I have to catch myself, and I say, "Oh, I didn't mean to say." And then sometimes, if I'm really focused and I'm really paying attention, I'll say thank you, because when somebody wishes us Merry Christmas, we just say thank you. But if they catch me, sometimes people will catch me off guard, and they catch me off guard, and they say Merry Christmas, and I say okay, same to you. And that's if they catch me off guard. If they catch me off guard. But if I'm focused and I'm paying attention, and I'm cognizant you know of what I need to say when this is being thrown at me, then and I'm fully aware. Then I say, okay, they say Merry Christmas. I say, okay, thank you. You know. But if I'm not paying attention, it depends. If I'm not paying attention and they say Merry Christmas, and then I find myself, because particularly when I worked in retail, I used to work at this Myers store, and then the customers used to come in and say Merry Christmas, and then I'd be like, say to you, because that was a little challenging too, because you got to have your customer skills down pat when you're working in retail. You got to have your customer skills um, down, and you want to be friendly to the customers and everything like that. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't want to be wishing them a Merry Christmas if I'm not down with Christmas, and so that was a little difficult too. And they would be like Merry Christmas, and sometimes they say to you, and just saying it in the process of trying to do my job and trying to be friendly to the customer, but then so I gotta admit that was a challenge too. When I worked in retail, I gotta admit that was a challenge as well. So it's not easy sometimes. I imagine it's a lot easier if a person was raised in it and they've been in it all their life, and they got baptized, and they never left and came back or whatever. um it just depends on the situation. Then they never celebrated it in the first place. So it's probably, I imagine it's probably a little bit easier for those witnesses, but it's probably a lot easier for them. But for me, I spent quite a few years celebrating Christmas, and so it's a challenge sometimes, because like I say, when people say Merry Christmas, I say same to you, or I'll catch myself singing the Christmas song. And like I said, when I was in the world and I was celebrating it, I had favorite songs that I like the favorite Christmas songs that I like to sing, and I like to sing. And sometimes I'll go in the store and I'll get into the music, like not necessarily the Christmas music, but if a certain particular song is playing in the store that I like, I'll go to dancing and singing. Sometimes I'll be singing in the store. But so sometimes I'll catch myself singing them Christmas songs, and then I have to think, and then I have to stop and think, June, what is you doing singing that? You're not supposed to be singing that. So it's challenging. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. It can be a challenge. It can be a challenge, because I wasn't raised in it. So, hey, London, how you doing? So I just wanted to educate you guys and let you guys know, you know, the challenges, reasons why we don't celebrate Christmas, and the challenges that I have to face navigating through the holidays. Okay, be sure to subscribe, and share. Hit that notification bell. got some more interesting video topics coming up. Speak to you.